I've asked him to talk about one page, a favorite page, which is a bit tricky. Of course, they're all my children. But the one I chose was page 106. And I thought that this was quite interesting in a way that it highlighted a few things about what my book's about. We come in medias res, as it were. And basically, we come in once there's been a duel in Highgate in 1610, and a man has been killed and his assailant has fled the scene. And so this page deals with what I thought was emblematic to a degree of what the rest of the book does, which is a micro study. It takes us into places and throws lights on things and processes which are usually quite shadowy or quite hidden from historians, partly because of a particular glut of material. And in this case, it is the coroner's court, the coroner's inquest. And we enter into a Highgate Inn the day after the duel, and we have coroners and jurymen around the dead body of a young man called John Egerton, who was a gentleman from Cheshire. And we don't know a lot about coroners' courts in the Jacobean period, partly because of the nature of our evidence. So this is interesting in showing how some of the evidence that I uncovered for this particular case gives us some interesting perspectives on how the coroner's court is run and how these things operate. So we have two coroners involved here because of the nature of the jurisdiction. As we'll see later in the book, those coroners are actually partisans, one for the killer, one for the dead man, and they have a little bit of chaos in how the court is run. We also have, interestingly, some evidence here of medical testimony being given before the coroner's court, which wasn't necessarily run-of-the-mill. Forensic evidence or medical evidence doesn't have the status in this period that it would later come to enjoy. And what we have is a very interesting insight into the ways in which the body of John Egerton, which is lying on a table in this inn, so not quite what the venue that we might associate with a coroner's inquest, is undressed by a passing surgeon. I do query as to whether he was passing, because he is actually a client of one of the individuals who becomes involved in the patronage of this case. And so we can find them undressing John Egerton's body, the way in which his doublet's on his back, his point is tied at his band, also tied below the codpiece, whereby the body could not be seen. And so he's ordered to be stripped. And then we have really interesting testimony about what they find. What the surgeon, Alexander Lillington, finds are 3 wounds. And the nature of those wounds basically give you a large part of the dynamics of the case that will come afterwards. Because he finds 3 wounds on the body, as he said, one under the arm, right arm going downwards towards the lung, one near the collarbone going downward into the body, and the third under the right shoulder blade going downward into the body. Now, why is that important? Well, it's important because you don't get those kinds of wounds in an honorary duel, an honorable duel. Usually in a duel, you get a single stab wound that goes through the body. And in fact, in the testimony of the man who is ultimately captured, Edward Morgan, who is the assailant, that is precisely what he claims happens. And so what we get with 3 wounds is the likely view that what had happened in the duel is a murder. What Edward Morgan was trying to argue, the assailant, was that he had been involved in an honorable fight between equals, which should be interpreted as manslaughter. As I mentioned, it's also interesting that on this page we get a mention of Thomas Howard, Earl of Suffolk, who is the patron of the surgeon. Thomas Howard, Earl of Suffolk, will actually obtain the pardon for murder of Edward Morgan, the assailant in this case. So this page, I guess, gives us an insight into how a microhistory works. It's a particular cache of evidence, and I would just draw attention to the footnotes here, in which you've got quite a lot of stuff from SP 46, 174 and 75. Those are the 2 volumes of case history, if you like, on which this is based. And it gives you an insight into some of the ways in which unusual parts or hidden parts of society run, like a coroner's court, or shall we say a prosecution for homicide. And that's all I've got to say about that. So I'll get out of here.